1 year after the events of Home Alone, and the McAllisters haven't learned anything, as they are all still pretty terrible people, especially Uncle Frank, who is still freeloading off his brother. And Buzz is kind of a dick too. This time, the dysfunctional Chicago-based family are planning a trip to Florida, but luckily for Kevin, his parents are negligent as usual, which sees him get on the wrong plane where he's in New York all by himself. Thanks to his dad's credit card, Kevin manages to stay in a classy hotel run by Tim Curry, who is automatically suspicious of Kevin, on the account that he's a kid all by himself, where Kevin still continues to have a great time being let loose in the city. But the vacation is cut short when Kevin discovers the Wet Bandits are back, who now go by the name Sticky Bandits, and plan to rob a toy store, of which the money of said store will go to help sick children, where Kevin arms himself up with traps once again, to take out the bandits once and for all, in this fun sequel, which some claim is even better than the original. Okay, is it just me, or does Marv get really messed up this time round? I mean, Kevin just destroys him. By the way, can you see my jumper? It says, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal." You know, just like the angels with filthier souls seen. For this episode, I was either going to wear this jumper or this t-shirt that has the alternative Home Alone 2 poster on it, the one that wasn't used. Yeah, more on that later. So, with all that, 10 things that you didn't know about Home Alone 2. The one where Kevin's mum has the hairdo that looks like a bodacious surf wave. Let's check it out.
Got it.
Number 10, the Good Son Deal. Seeing how Home Alone was a huge hit in 1990, making it the third highest grossing movie of that year, a sequel was inevitable. Most of the same cast and crew returned, including director Chris Columbus, writer-producer John Hughes, as well as composer John Williams. But without a doubt, the most vital person to return was the movie's main star Macaulay Culkin, as he was literally the face of Home Alone. However, when Macaulay's father and manager Kit Culkin learned about another movie that was in production at 20th Century Fox, The Good Son, he wanted Macaulay to star in that too. So he told 20th Century Fox that Macaulay would return if he was cast as the sinister main lead in The Good Son. To which 20th Century Fox obliged, which put The Good Son's production to halt for a year, so Macaulay could film Home Alone 2. In addition to that, Macaulay, who was 11 at the time of filming, was paid $4.5 million for starring in Home Alone 2, which was the highest salary ever paid to a child of that age. I already spoke more about the deal that Kit Culkin made about casting Macaulay in The Good Son, so if you want to know more about that, just watch my Good Son episode. Number 9, Icy Temperatures got in the way of filming. So the action of Home Alone 2 was shifted from the comforts of the McAllister home to the streets of New York City, with filming taking place in locations such as the original World Trade Center, as well as Central Park. However, temperatures while filming were apparently really cold, maybe a little too cold, as while filming, often the cameras would get so cold they would freeze up. Which doesn't really surprise me, as I always felt the scenes on the streets of New York had an icy cold chill about them. In addition to that, the Duncan's Toy Chest toy store, which plays a pivotal role in Home Alone 2, was actually filmed outside the Rookery building in Chicago, and was the same building as the headquarters for Elliot Ness in the 1987 movie, The Untouchables. That wasn't the only Chicago location that doubled for New York. The Plaza Hotel swimming pool that Kevin visits to practice his cannon bombs in was actually filmed at a Four Seasons hotel in Chicago. Speaking of Duncan's Toy Chest, just what was that Kevin bought from that shop? I have no idea what it was. Whatever it was, we never got that down here in Osgolia. So if anyone knows what this is, let me know. Number 8, Daniel Stern's unpleasant pigeon encounter. So as mentioned, Daniel Stern's Marv character takes quite a beating in Home Alone 2. Okay, Harry gets a few festive traps of his own, but I always feel that Marv in particular really suffers the wrath of Kevin, and really brutally this time round. Heck, the guy gets hit in the face by a ton of bricks and gets electrocuted to the point where he turns into a skeleton. How is this guy even alive? Okay, the violence in Home Alone 2 is done in a real Looney Tunes way, as it was with the first movie, but Marv actor Daniel Stern actually did suffer an unfortunate incident while filming Home Alone 2. It's the scene where the pigeon lady throws birdseed all over the sticky bandits, where they then get attacked by a ton of pigeons. According to Harry actor Joe Pesci, both he and Stern were covered in real birdseed and thus got covered with about 300 pigeons, and it was a very unpleasant experience for both of them. And while filming that scene, Daniel Stern actually had a pigeon fly in his mouth while he was screaming. Yep, right down the old kisser. Stern would go on to say that it was revolting. Well, what can I say? When it comes to the Home Alone movies, Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern really did suffer for their art. Number 7. Story of the Talkboy. So in Home Alone 2, we see that Kevin McAllister has a pocket-sized audio recording device called a Talkboy, which allows Kevin to make audio recordings, as well as slow down the speed of the recordings to distort voices, so he can use the device to trick people along his ways in his New York adventures.
Howdy do. This is Peter McAllister, the father.
The Talkboy that we see in Home Alone 2 was actually a prop, as the item didn't really exist when the movie was being made. Which is surprising, as I always thought it was based off a real toy the production got their hands on. However, after the release of Home Alone 2, Home Alone's creator John Hughes and 20th Century Fox sold distribution rights of the Talkboy to Tiger Electronics to create a real recording toy for kids, so kids at home can also have Kevin McAllister's favourite toy. There was even an advert put together where, like Kevin, we see some kid using the Talkboy to pull off pranks on people and generally being an annoying little turd. Hey, this kid just can't pull it off like Macaulay Culkin could. The Talkboy proved popular with kids, and there were even spin-offs like the Talk Girl and Talkboy Mini. However, the Talkboy ceased distribution in 1999, which meant kids had 7 years of annoying everyone with audio recordings.
Credit card. You got it.
Number 6. Tim Curry lending his voice. There was a lot of merch associated with Home Alone 2, such as a Home Alone 2 board game, Home Alone 2 doll, Home Alone 2 novelization, not to mention a string of Home Alone 2 video games. There's no point going over these games, as the angry video game nerd already went over them all. Heck, he even had Macaulay Culkin in his video. How can you top that? Well, you can't. However, the piece of Home Alone merchandise that fascinates me the most is the Home Alone 2 audio storybook, as it was narrated by none other than Tim Curry himself, who also played the hotel concierge in Home Alone 2. Yep, in the early 90s, not only was Tim Curry terrorizing kids as Pennywise, but he was also narrating the story of the Home Alone sequel to them. And there's just something so comforting and soothing about Tim Curry's British accent reading the story.
December the 22nd, Oak Park, Illinois, 6 p.m. The ground was covered with a white blanket of snow, and the houses were lit with colorful, twinkling Christmas lights. On the outside, the large brick McAllister house resembled the other stately homes on the block, but inside was a tornado of pre-travel chaos as everyone rushed to pack for their holiday trip.
I swear I'm getting ASMR from this storybook. Interestingly, unlike the movie, the audiobook starts with a nightmare sequence by Marv, where he has a dream that he and Harry return to the McAllister home to get revenge on Kevin, where in the garage Marv pulls on some dangling string where a dummy falls down, followed by a live lawnmower which falls on him, a joke that would actually go on to be used for Home Alone 3. Also, is it just me, or when Tim Curry does an impersonation of Marv, does he sound like Pennywise?
Marv was reaching for Kevin's throat.
Merry Christmas, little fella!
It's not just me, right? Number 5. Tiny details. So here are some tiny details that you may not have known about that appear in Home Alone 2. Firstly, in Home Alone, we learn that Kevin's cousin Fuller loves nothing better than to drink Pepsi. But if you look closely in Home Alone 2, you'll see that Fuller's choice of soda has now switched to Coke. Either way, Coke or Pepsi, what does it matter? Neither of them are good if it means that Fuller is going to hose the bed. At the end of the movie, we learn that Kevin racks up a huge room service bill, and if you look closely at the receipt, you'll see that Kevin ordered 2 chocolate cakes, 6 chocolate mousses with chocolate, vanilla and strawberry ice cream topped with M&Ms, chocolate sprinkles, cherries, nuts, marshmallows, caramel syrup, chocolate syrup, strawberry syrup, whipped cream, and bananas, as well as 6 custard flans, a pastry cart, 8 strawberry tarts, and 36 chocolate-covered strawberries, proving that Kevin has quite the sweet tooth, and possibly diabetes too. Famous puppeteer Frank Oz, who is best known for bringing to life Yoda and Miss Piggy, has a scene in the background on the streets of New York. He doesn't do anything, he's just sort of there and then isn't. Then there's a scene where Kevin gets on the wrong plane. He starts talking to the man sitting next to him, where the man starts speaking in French, where Kevin looks confused at us the viewer. Ever wondered what that passenger said? Well, I can tell you right now what the passenger said. He said, "What's that? I'm from France and I'm a tourist here. It's my first time coming to America. Do you know a good restaurant? Or maybe your parents, they know a good place? Why aren't you responding? You speak a bit of French, right? I don't speak English at all. Give me a bit of help at least. My name is Andre. What's your name?" Yep, finally, you can all sleep soundly at night knowing that the French man that Kevin was sitting next to on the plane was called Andre. That's my Christmas gift to you. Number 4. Ditched back-to-back sequel concept. 2 years before Home Alone 2 came out, the Back to the Future series had great success with its sequels Back to the Future 2 and 3, which were filmed simultaneously back-to-back. And the Home Alone production thought that that would be a great idea for their franchise, so there was actually a plan for a third Home Alone movie to be filmed in conjunction with Home Alone 2, so fans of Home Alone could have doubled their pleasure with a third movie coming out soon after the release of the second movie. However, the idea was scrapped thanks to Culkin's high fee for starring in Part 2. To make another movie probably would have put his fee up to $8 to $9 million, so the third movie was put on hold. However, as the 90s went on, Macaulay Culkin gave up on acting, in which a third movie continued to stay on hold, and wasn't released until 5 years later in 1997, this time with a different young actor playing a completely different character. But Home Alone 3 is a story for another time. Number 3. Alternative poster. We all know the famous Home Alone 2 poster with Kevin standing in front of the Empire State Building, with a giant-sized Marvin Harry gripping the building, letting us all know that Kevin was now a kid let loose in the big city of New York. However, an earlier unused poster showed the Statue of Liberty doing the Home Alone scream. Yep, the Statue of Liberty sure is pretty terrified that Kevin McAllister is in town. To be fair though, the Home Alone scream had become pretty iconic in the early 90s, and nearly everyone was pulling this face. However, on a creepy note, an early teaser trailer just featured aerial shots of the Statue of Liberty, and everything seems fine. Until, just like the poster, the Statue of Liberty pulls the Home Alone scream, and honestly, it's terrifying! Just look at the eyes on that thing. Have fun seeing that in your nightmares over the next couple of months. So, they were really pushing for the Statue of Liberty to be doing this in the early promotional work of Home Alone 2. Number 2. Airport chaos. Just like the first movie, there is a scene where we see the McAllisters frantically running through the Chicago airport in order to try and catch their plane on time. Only for Home Alone 2, filming the airport scene was more difficult, as the airport had to remain open during the shoot, and the airport was flocked with fans of the first movie as well as fans of Macaulay Culkin. And not only did the production have to avoid enthusiastic fans, but also the paparazzi, whom were trying to get some shots of the filming. The problem is, when the first movie was filmed, Home Alone wasn't a thing yet, but it sure was by the time the second movie came along, and it seemed that everyone wanted a piece of the action. Even in the behind the scenes feature, you can see a ton of fans trying to get a glimpse of the movie and its main star during its New York filming. Incidentally, the airport scene was filmed in February, but the airport left its Christmas decorations on display from the previous Christmas, rather than take them down and put them up again for the shoot. Another funny piece of trivia associated with Home Alone 2's filming is director Chris Columbus said a lot of money had to be spent to put fake snow in Central Park, and as soon as the fake snow arrived, New York was hit by a blizzard. Well, I guess you win some and you lose some. Number 1. Home Alone 2 lost in the box office. Home Alone 2 was released on November the 20th, 1992, and although it didn't make as much as the original, it was still hugely successful, making $359 million on a $28 million budget, and just like its original, it became the third highest grossing movie of that year, trailing behind The Bodyguard and Aladdin. However, the critics really didn't like Home Alone 2. The biggest complaints it got was it was just a rehash of the first movie, only the humour felt forced, and its use of cartoon violence, which admittedly is more brutal this time round. One review even referred to the slapstick violence in Home Alone 2 as being, quote, cruel. I can remember when Home Alone 2 came out, a lot of teachers and parent groups were up in arms over the violence seen in the movie. Ironically, the same thing happened earlier that very year with Batman Returns. I'm sure that if memes existed back then Batman Returns would have done the James Franco first time meme to Home Alone 2. What's really baffling is Home Alone 2 has a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes of 33%. Come on guys, the movie isn't that bad. Seriously, 33%? I think the violence wasn't meant to be serious, it was tongue-in-cheek slapstick, of which comical crashes and falls have been around since the early days of cinema. Me and my friends loved this movie when it came out, and even though we were kids, we still had the common sense to know not to throw bricks at people and try to electrocute them. In fact, I know some fans who say they prefer Home Alone 2 to Home Alone 1, and find it to be a funnier movie. I think Home Alone 1 is a more magical movie that has some gags, whereas Home Alone 2 is more of a comical, all-out gag movie. So to me, Home Alone 1 is the better movie, but Home Alone 2 is the funnier movie. But either way, both are great movies, and both make for enjoyable Christmas viewings. So that was my look into Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Definitely a worthy successor to its original. It's full of laughs and Christmas cheer that'll be a great addition to anyone's festive celebrations. Anyway, I'm Minty.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.